Rare occasion where people interested in the subject are coming from different states. I'll only make a brief comment and leave a much larger time for interaction where you can ask me or any of my colleagues present here on the subject predominantly dealing with the economy itself. What is my overall experience and impression during the last 2.5 years? One obvious challenge has been that we've functioned under adverse global circumstance. One of the initial challenges before the government was that we had to re-establish the credibility of a decision-making process as far as the Indian economy was concerned. Because there was a long, prolonged phase where critical decisions were not being taken. And there was obviously an exasperation over the fact that critical decisions were not being taken. For any government to function, the leadership obviously is provided by the Prime Minister and the Prime Minister's office. And then the different ministries have to act within the framework and the pace for the agenda that is set by the Prime Minister. And I think one important feature has been, and that's been a characteristic of this government, its decisiveness. And that has been really the proof of leadership as far as the government is concerned. The government has not shied away from taking necessary decisions. It's even being willing to take decisions where there is an element of a risk involved, as long as the government thought that the decisions are in larger national interest. And I think the second important factor is that despite decisiveness, we have endeavored our best to take as many decisions as possible through a large consensus route. We've not delayed those decisions indefinitely for want of consensus, but we've created an adequate space and environment for that consensus. And if you look at some of the important directional decisions, I think one of the obvious decisions which had been pending for a long time, that different sectors of the economy needed to be opened up. They needed to be opened up because you needed a lot of foreign investment into the country, because foreign investment also is one of the important engines which Indian economy required for growth. There were also those sectors like insurance which required changes in legislation, which can obviously be brought about through a larger consensus. And there were several areas which could be done through executive decision making. We used both the instruments. We simplified those procedures. And the effort of the central government has been that we must ease the environment in which business is to be done in India. And I must acknowledge at this stage that for the kind of steps we have taken, we still have not got from international agencies the full recognition for the effort that we've put in. We learned from one experience of the last government, and that one experience was that vestige of too much discretion in the hands of the government can in the long run prove to be counterproductive. So the decisions with regard to coal mining, minerals, spectrum, where there was a lot of flexibility and discretion in governments, eventually led to finger pointing, cancellation of contracts, disruption of business environment, and then the energies of the government being frittered away in trying to firefight. We learned from that experience, and therefore one of the initial acts of the government was that some of these critical economic decisions should be taken through a market mechanism which is fair and objective. And government discretions must maintain an arm's length distance. Making sure that state support and subsidies reach the right people and therefore are rationalized has been discussed for decades but never implemented. We implemented that. There is still a lot of work in progress. The Aadhaar legislation has proved to be an important catalyst in that regard. It's led to a lot of savings, it's led to a lot of direction where subsidies reach the most deserving and don't reach those who don't need them. We are still in the process of executing our taxation changes. A lot of distance has been covered as far as the GST is concerned. It's again the consensus approach that we've been following. And one of the objects has been that since the GST Council is a federal decision-making process, and the manner in which it functions in the initial years will lay down a precedent for the future, rather than resort to votings and divisions on every small issue, we've been trying to discuss, rediscuss, prolong discussions and then reach a consensus. And so far, most of the major issues we've been able to resolve through that consensus. Only the last stages remain, and I do hope we are able to resolve that by a larger consensus also. And this form of functioning of the Council, where discussions and consensus is a preferred option, is a precedent we are trying in this federal decision-making body to establish. We also have parallelly reforms going on as far as the direct tax structures are concerned. And if you have seen from the insolvency bill to the GST to now the decisions in the Council, our preferred option has been consensus. And we will hope to exercise that preference itself. I'll just make one last comment before I leave it open to you. I'd already yesterday discussed with our friends based in Delhi the recent decision of the government to cancel as a legal tender the rupee 500 and rupee 1000 notes. We are trying to ensure that at the earliest the requisite replacement currency is available with people. We do believe that there is no need to rush in the initial days because people have a lot of time till 30th December with the entire banking and the post office system. And therefore, the more the deposits in the exchange are spread out, the more will be the convenience to the people itself. I had indicated yesterday that the banking department and the Reserve Bank have taken all necessary steps to keep banks open to the extent it is necessary, also open on the weekends, so that the number of people coming to the banks could be entertained. With regard to people making deposits in banks, well, small deposits which are made, nobody will face any questions or any harassment of any kind. So people who have small amounts of cash, there has been an Indian tradition to keep some cash always at home for exigencies and emergencies which is required. They can exchange that, they can deposit that into their accounts. And the revenue departments are not going to take notice of these small depositors. In any case, deposits which are within the tax exempted limits can always be made into the banking system without any questions being asked. It's only those who have large amounts of undisclosed monies who will have to face the consequences under the tax laws itself. And you already have the tax laws in place. Nothing new is intended. And under all our existing laws, whatever accountability they have, they will have to face that accountability. I've already explained yesterday the advantages that this is going to have, and therefore I'm not going into those details. But overall, I do feel that notwithstanding the constraints of global economy, on our own intrinsic strength within those global limitations, we are doing reasonably well. This year, both tax collections have been reasonably good. Half year having passed by, the public expenditure has been much more than even the previous year. So there is a spurt in public expenditure. We are getting good global investments. And local demand also is picking up. There will be for a few days till there is a inadequacy of currency, some impact on local purchases. But in the medium and the long run, the overall impact of the recent steps that we have taken on the Indian economy will be positive. That is all I had to say in an opening comment, and I leave the remaining time for you for interaction. And as the DGPIB has said, those who have come from outside, this should be an important opportunity for them to field questions and interact.
Thank you, Honorable Minister, sir. Let's start with 25 here. Please identify your name and organization.
हेलो
अपना नाम और अखबार का और राज्य का नाम दोनों बताओ।
मैं रजनीकांत वशिष्ठ लखनऊ से नॉर्दर्न इंडिया पत्रिका। मेरा सवाल सिर्फ ये है कि शहर में तो दिक्कत नहीं होगी, लेकिन गांव देहातों की जो पब्लिक है, शादियों का सीजन है, तो वो वहां एक खास किस्म की पैनिक है, तो वहां कुछ विशेष इंतजाम क्या सरकार करेगी?
देखिए, पूरा देश भर में 1.25 लाख बैंक्स का और उसके अतिरिक्त बहुत अधिक मात्रा में देहात तक डाकघरों का एक बहुत बड़ा नेटवर्क है, और ये नेटवर्क अपने आप में काफी मात्रा तक पर्याप्त रहेगा। इसके अतिरिक्त कोई व्यवस्था करनी है तो अभी इसको आरंभ होने दीजिए, तो इसमें कोई अतिरिक्त आवश्यकता होगी तो उसके ऊपर भी हम लोग विचार करेंगे।
Yeah, please, 42. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Sajid Mangat. I'm the national news editor for Bloomberg Quint. I'm coming from Mumbai. My question is that India is still a cash-led cash transaction economy with respect to consumption. We have removed 86% of the currency in value from the market. How will it impact the consumption as?
Well, in the short run, it could, but eventually, a very large part of this currency, which is being removed, was also lying static. And therefore, once over the next few weeks the replacement takes place, I think the current levels of consumption then will eventually have to gradually come back.
Is there amount of static currency estimate which the government has?
The banks have their own way of calculating depending on the number of times a particular note is used, because then it requires a replacement. I'm not venturing to get into that, but there is a significant part of it which has been lying static.
Yeah, sir. Here, sir.
Yeah, the Chief Economic Advisor wants to say something.
You see,